The eighth episode of The Twilight Zone is quite possibly the most famous of all time. It's been talked about, written about, referenced, parodied, and admired since the day it first aired. Several of Rod Serling's recurring themes are present in this story, including loneliness, isolation, and the fickle hand of fate. But is it as good as its reputation would suggest? Is it the perfect culmination of Serling's work so far? Or simply a rehashing of old ideas destined to be forgotten by future generations? We'll take a closer look at all that and more today at the No Rules Film School.
I am New York City zero budget guerrilla filmmaker Sean Weathers.
And I'm Canadian screenwriter and playwright Angus Combe. Watch along with us as we comment on, react to, review, and rank Episode 8 of Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone. It's called Time Enough at Last, and you are watching Screamed.
So even younger audiences who may not even have seen or heard of this episode have probably seen it parodied on I think one of the Walking Dead spin-offs I think did it. The Simpsons famously did it, and other TV shows and movies have definitely made reference to this. Definitely one of the more popular twist endings, themes, ideas to ever come out of the Twilight Zone.
Absolutely. I think I knew about this episode even before I'd ever seen it. I think I'd heard it talked about. I think I'd seen clips from it. Yeah, it's just, I think it's the most famous episode. Certainly the one I always think of when people say The Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Much like Walking Distance, this one for me, it's not just great. Like last week, The Lonely was great. But this is great, and it also exceeded my expectations of what I remembered of it. And I'll go over those points when they do come up. But I will say this for first-time watchers, or even people who have seen this before, knowing who the people who know the twist, obviously, I mean, it's a very fa it's famous for the twist, is
Yes.
tracking his glasses throughout the episode. It's really it adds another layer to things when you track his glasses. Not only are they like binoculars or like telescopes. That design is just amazing. But how many times he takes it off where he could potentially have dropped it, or when he takes it off and you can see like how poor his vision is, I think adds layers to the anticipation. I think the first half of this episode is very comedic, but a lot of it is really good foreshadowing of what's to come. And I almost, during the first 10 to 15 minutes, maybe closer to 12, thought that it would not live up to expectations. But halfway through this episode, it gets dark. I mean, dark and really, really twisted.
That's true. It definitely does. And actually, that's something I thought about too, that, it is kind of comedic at times. And I know you're not a huge fan of the comedy episodes, so I wondered if that kind of affected your enjoyment of this one a little bit.
Like I said, at first I was
Yeah.
like, oh man, don't tell me this famous episode is not going to be up there, you know? Am I going to be a hater on the next podcast? And like I said, for the first few minutes, the first half of it, I was like, I don't know, but there's a delineation point, delineation point where it just goes drastically different. Where it's just like, is this the same thing I'm watching? Like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, from my point of view, I thought the comedy more or less worked. I thought it was, it wasn't annoying me or anything. I thought it was still a good story. So I wasn't bothered by that aspect of it at all.
No, I wasn't bothered by it, and I did thought it worked, but I don't think a comedy episode in something like The Twilight Zone is going to be up there with one of the best episodes. And at the end of this particular podcast, we are going to rate this one and all the previous ones we've watched before. So make sure to stay till the end to figure out where we rank this one and everything in season one so far.
Yes, absolutely. And this episode was directed by a guy named John Brahm, and he actually directed the most episodes of anyone. He did 12 episodes of The Twilight Zone. I know there's a few directors who did two or three or four, but he did 12. So that's quite something. I think this was the first one that he did, actually. So uh, Rod Serling must have found a kindred spirit there or something.
Yeah. So interesting thing with the antagonists in this is the boss. I think this is the only real sequence the boss has, but he does make an
Mm-hmm.
impact. And honestly, being a general manager and having before that been a manager, before that been a supervisor, I've been in his position before, and I kind of was on his side until he said, "Go back to your cage," which was like, I think that was a needed line because I'm like, this guy's a pretty terrible employee. Especially when you hear the badge thing where he was staring at the woman's breasts. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know. Like, him saying go back to
Yeah.
your cage, I think was a much needed line to make sure we stayed on the side of our protagonist.
Yeah, and that's true. That I think the character, the main character, some people might view him as kind of annoying or a wimp or something like that, and they might not like him, but I think I basically do, and I know what you mean. That when he's reading a book at work, and he even puts up the sign saying, next window or whatever. I
He's
mean,
reading while he's counting money.
yeah, I mean, it's going a little far there. I mean, I understand he loves reading and he doesn't get a chance. So, but yeah, you can't help but think, yeah, the boss isn't really out of line to be telling him not to do that. But yes, he does go a little far, and he is a little mean about it. So
No.
that helps, and that's Vaughn Taylor playing the boss. And some people might recognize him. He was actually in Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. He played Mr. Lowry, Janet Leigh's boss, the real estate agent.
Oh, right. I didn't
So
know that. Nice.
yeah, so iconic, and I think he appeared in a lot of movies and TV shows, kind of playing those type of characters, bosses. And he was in Jailhouse Rock, the Elvis film, playing a financial advisor for Elvis. So yeah, he's kind of a recognizable character guy. Never really a big star, but he's very good at playing those kind of officious boss type characters.
Now, catching up to what we're looking at on screen here, we have our second protagonist, which is the wife, which to me is even better than the boss because there's a sense of realism because there are so many toxic relationships where women find joy in emasculating men. And I see it all the time at the hotel where it's like, guests will go into the room, couple, husband, wife, and then the wife will come down with all these complaints. And then the husband will be meekishly in the background, just like looking at his shoes or twiddling his thumbs, while she's just like, how dare you? This is unacceptable. And she kind of reminds me of that type of a character. Now, I know historically, women playing side characters or the wife or the girlfriend is never a part that's fully embraced. But I think parts like this, yeah, this is not a great comparison, but even like Nicole Kidman, because today's the 25th, the day of recording this, 25th anniversary of Eyes Wide Shut. Very small role she had in The Wife. She was amazing in that part. Sometimes those relationship dynamics where you see the spouse, obviously it's more so the wife when it comes to movies, but that spouse character can add layers to the protagonist because it can make you see another side of them or see what they have to deal with in the other half of their life.
Yeah, totally. And I think I had a similar reaction to her as you did to the boss. That at first I kind of thought, well, I can understand her because, in our world, it's like you're trying to talk to somebody and they're on their phone, right? They're reading stuff on their phone and they're not looking at you and they're not listening, and it's very annoying. So I can see how if he's got his head in a book or a magazine, that would be kind of annoying. But I mean, she goes to extremes, I think, in her dislike of him, perhaps, or anger at him. So yeah, she goes so far that you just can't help but feel sorry for him and not really like her as much. So
Much like
uh,
that cage line, her crossing out the book and then like asking
yeah,
him to read it, knowing what she did, was
yeah.
very necessary to get us to stay on the side of our protagonist.
Oh yeah, and I mean anyone who loves books, I mean that's just like sacrilege to see that. It's like, oh my God, what have you done to that book? Uh,
Yeah. And we
she
did see
calls,
a scene when he bent over to pick up the pages where the glasses fell off. And again, just tracking
yeah,
the glasses throughout is quite interesting.
yes, I thought that was brilliant foreshadowing there, actually. And she calls the poetry in the book doggerel, which, if people don't know, it's kind of a derogatory term where it's kind of an insult to the poetry. It's like too easy. It's kind of cheap and trivial, which of course is kind of outrageous to say that about those great poets. So
Mhm.
that doesn't really endear her to us either, I don't think.
I love this right here. The way this was executed was great. Now, we
Yeah,
talked about how some of these episodes can seem a little cheap. This is a very low budget show. They crank out a lot of these every year. But this is one that the visuals, starting from that bomb scene onward, are just amazing. Not just for the Twilight Zone, but for TV in general around this time.
yeah, totally. Definitely feels filmic. It doesn't feel like a little play on a small set or anything like that.
No, it
Definitely
doesn't.
more scope to it. Yeah.
Here we have another, we're about to see another use of the glasses and foreshadowing, and also a brilliant shot where he comes out and now everything is, we see what he sees when his glasses are off. And it's very necessary for us to see the difference of when he has his glasses on and when he doesn't, because that's going to play such a huge factor at the end.
Yeah. And I thought it was a brilliant reveal too of what has happened. We at first we can't really see it. It's all blurry. And then, ooh, that looks bad. So I thought that really worked on two different levels in a way.
Hmm. Yeah.
And interestingly enough, they actually had two pairs of glasses for Burgess Meredith because he couldn't see at all when he was wearing these big, thick glasses. He literally couldn't see. So it's only in the close ups where you can really see his eyes that he's wearing those big, thick glasses. And when it's in a long shot, he's got basically clear glass in there that he can see because otherwise he wouldn't have been able to even move around without tripping over things.
Kind of ironic in that it's the exact opposite of his character.
Yeah,
He can't see with the
exactly.
glasses, but
Yeah,
his characters can't see without them. So,
yeah. And I mean, it just shows what a brilliant actor he is because you really believe he can see with the glasses and he can't see without them. So he's really convincing. And yeah, Burgess Meredith. I mean, what an iconic actor. He actually appears on the Twilight Zone four times, and this is his first appearance. But actually, he's tied for the most appearances in a starring role. He's tied with Jack Klugman, interestingly enough. So
mm.
uh, clearly an actor that Rod Serling liked and a great actor. And he was around for decades.
More again, the darkness in this episode kind of starts with the bomb, and there we just saw a shot of his boss's arm under the
Oh yeah,
rubble. And again, this again from the bomb onward, all the comedy is gone, and it just gets bleak. It just
yeah,
gets it's just like this is why you watch this episode. This is why this episode is iconic because of everything that happens post bomb. But everything that
yeah,
happens pre-bomb is a lot of foreshadowing and setup and getting you to understand the character and getting the character established, getting the world established. And it's necessary. Sometimes you can't just have peak, 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 peak. You gotta have peaks and valleys. So when the peak comes, it's more rewarding.
yeah. Definitely, definitely. And that arm too. That's kind of shocking. And I think that's the only time after the bomb that we actually see another person or another part of a person. I don't think we ever see anyone else, do we?
No,
It's
from
like
that at
it's
this point on, it's the last man on earth type of premise.
yeah,
And here we have some narration by Rod Sterling. And I've mentioned this before, and it's not something that I ever thought about. It just kind of started resonating with me as we've been doing this rewatch, is how unnecessary all of his narration is. Like I kind of subconsciously noticed it as we were going. It really stuck out with last week's episode, Lonely, and into this one where it's like you take out his narration, you miss nothing at all. And it ranges for me. between superfluous and unnecessary, honestly. Well, I guess superfluous would be unnecessary. I guess it
Yeah.
ranges between hmm,
You're thinking
uh
something negative, like annoying or something?
intrusive. Intrusive.
Intrusive? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't really, it doesn't bother me, but I think you're right that you could take it out and it would work just fine. And it
Yeah. I
might be
mean,
a sign of its times,
it's like if it wasn't there, nothing you'd still understand everything. And to a certain point, it just
Yeah.
distracts you and takes you out of the story to suddenly hear him talking over it. Now, I'm not taking any shots against him. He's the creator. He wrote most of these episodes. This is his child. Whatever he didn't write, he produced, he brought everything together. He is the man. I'm not taking anything away from him. I'm just saying
Hmm.
this aspect of it, I think wasn't needed, but obviously it's iconic, and
Yeah.
I'm definitely in the minority. But I'm just
Yeah.
after you watch the Twilight Zone like 30 times, you kind of start noticing things. So
Yeah. And I guess, too, it's that, in 1959, it may have seemed more necessary then than it does now. I don't know. Maybe audiences weren't as sophisticated or something and didn't, maybe I don't know. It's hard to say whether we get it more than they would have without the narration.
Mhm.
I don't know. But
Yeah. So we did talk about like how darker it gets in the second half, post-apocalypse. And also the budget definitely seems whatever they did to make this look great. Who knows how much more they spent? It looks amazing. But I would also
mhm.
say, yeah, hey, give credit to the set design. It is just
Yes.
great. Obviously, this must be a matte painting in the background, but the way it's lit, the way it's put together, it just looks like a vast world. It doesn't look like a set. Obviously, it is a set, but it just looks like there's scope and depth to what you're looking at, even though it's just, a painting behind him and he's just, on a small little set in front of it.
Yeah, definitely. Looks great.
Yeah. And we've talked before, like a lot of these Twilight Zone episodes are very linear, and it's all dependent on the lead character. And here we have another great performance in the lead role. And as you've mentioned, he's had several lead roles in the Twilight Zone, obviously the Rocky movies, the Penguin
Yes.
in Batman, and for me, one of my favorite performances from him was in the first adaptation, I think, of Mice and Men on the big screen. I thought
Yes.
he was brilliant in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And he said that of all the things he'd done, especially the TV things, this episode of the Twilight Zone was the thing that people talked to him about the most. People would come up to him on the street. They always wanted to talk about this. And he did say that the movies, there might have been some, including of Mice and Men, that people wanted to talk about, but for TV, this was absolutely the number one thing people would talk to him about. So it was definitely one of his big moments, I think.
That would make sense because this is definitely timeless, you know? You think of the
Yeah.
works that he's done, aside from film buffs like me and people like you who were, probably in their 20s when Of Mice and Men came out, with the exception of people like us. Did I say a
Yeah.
joke? I didn't realize that's I was gonna say.
I found it amusing. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't say anything funny. I was just being serious. I don't know what's going on. So aside from people like us, the most timeless things he's done is playing Mickey and Rocky in this. And
Yeah.
obviously Mickey is a beloved character, but when people think of Rocky, they think of Stallone, So I
Hmm.
can see why this would be it. Probably I would assume Mickey would in Rocky movies would be a second to that.
Yeah, I would think so. And he was nominated for Academy Awards, actually, supporting actors for Rocky and also Day of the Locusts that came out the year before Rocky. Um,
Mm.
and, oddly enough, this is just an interesting fact, but he actually was on the blacklist thanks to the Committee for Un-American Activities. He was blacklisted. And so he actually disappeared from movies for about 10 years and
Mm.
stuck to doing theater and radio, but thankfully he came back and he kept acting until he was in his 90s when he did Grumpy Old Men and Grumpier Old Men. So,
Mm,
also very popular, and he was great in those. He was hilarious. But what a career! Amazing actor.
yeah. So I watch this twice before, and that's kind of my pattern. If I like it, I'm gonna watch it twice, and the others kind of I don't. So this is the third one I've watched twice during this rewatch. This is, you think the Holy S moment would come at the end with the twist? This was
Hmm.
my Holy S moment. I'm watching this episode, I remember most of it. When he's about to off himself here, I'm like, whoa! I do not remember this episode getting that dark. All I remember
Yeah,
is like, oh, the twist ending. Yeah, Burgess Meredith was pretty good in it. Yeah, it's a fun. It's
yeah,
been parodied. When he's about to say, I was like, yo, what the F is going on here? That kind of
yeah,
caught me off guard. It was like, holy S, what the F? I was kind of shocked at that moment. I'm like, I do not remember this being that bleak.
yeah. No, I didn't remember that either, and it was kind of shocking and interesting too, because you think his character would be kind of where he ends up, that he's happy to be alone with his books or whatever, but he needs human contact, even though his wife was terrible to him, he sort of was looking for her. And I mean, it's an interesting statement. Can
Yeah,
you exist alone, or do you need other people?
yeah. Well, technically, that was before he found out about the books, but aside from that,
Yeah,
everything's
yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it was surprising to me.
and here, this set design. Oh, it's so amazing. It's
Yeah,
so, I mean, it's almost too on the nose. It's like
yeah,
he's walking down to hell in a way, and then
yeah,
you visually see every year of his life that he's already like, allocating to all of these books. He finally sits
yes,
down, you see all the books behind him. It's such a great visual. And when you thought it was maybe a little bit too on the nose with the visuals,
yeah,
he starts talking about time and then hugs a clock right in front of him. It's like,
yeah,
okay, like I we get what you're going at here, It's like subtlety. What just flew out the window? Oh, subtlety just flew out the window. That's what happened there.
yeah,
He's literally hugging time that has stopped. So it's just
yeah,
it's great. It's great. It's great.
yeah. It's sort of a bookend too to when his watch shatters and
Pun intended?
unintended. Do you think unintended
No, I
bookend?
said I was giving you credit. I was saying pun
Oh,
intended
oh, I
when you said
see.
bookend.
Yes,
And here we have the iconic moment.
yes,
His glasses just fell off before, but they've never broken.
yeah,
Now they're broken.
yeah,
This is just so brilliant, man. This is so brilliant. And what's messed up is he doesn't deserve it.
yeah. That's true too. Yeah, absolutely. Like often these kind of stories,
And
they're
here's a
about care.
brilliant pull-out crane shot.
Yeah, often they're about characters who do deserve it. They've done something wrong, they get punished. But this guy really hasn't done anything wrong, and he doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought this would have been more poignant again without the narration, where everything
yeah,
just settles in with us. It's like, oh my God, what's going to happen to this guy? He
yeah,
can't even kill himself now because he can't find the gun.
yeah. That's
This
true.
almost reminds me of that Greek mythology thing, Titanus or whatever you pronounce the name. But it's this Greek mythology where this figure is in water and this tree with fruit is just out of his reach. As he starts reaching it, the water descends and he can't quite get it. And it's just always there. He's just like stuck for eternity in eternal hunger and he can't reach that fruit. Here, he's
Yeah,
surrounded with everything he's always wanted. And not only can he not enjoy those books or read them, and but he can't even end it. It's eternity or the equivalent of eternity because he can't find he doesn't know where the gun is anymore, so he can't even off himself. It is just dark, dude. This is some dark
Ah,
ass.
it is. It definitely is. And it's based on a short story. And apparently, the short story was really all about the twist and didn't have quite as much of the story or the characters in it. So Rod Serling kind of fleshed it out and made it a lot more. And very glad he did.
Absolutely, absolutely. This was an amazing episode. So no
Yeah.
spoilers, but let's get to our list. So
Yes.
this is the first time we're going over the list, and we're gonna go over it live. And then after this, obviously, we'll have a better idea moving forward. So this is the eighth episode we've watched, and what we're gonna try to do is compromise rather than, hey, we're gonna have a Sean list, the list that's correct, and an Angus list, the list that can kiss my blank. But we're going to have a film school list where it's going to be what us collectively as the film school decides is the correct order for these episodes. And hey, if we can't come to a consensus, we're going to let our students decide and we're going to put it out there for you guys to vote. How does that sound to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
All right. So when we do not have a consensus, let me know. Do you happen to have the episodes in front of you or no?
I do. Yeah. I've got them
Okay.
here.
So let's start at the bottom and work our way to the top. When we disagree, let me know, and then we'll leave those up. We'll put up a vote for the fans to decide, or the
Yeah.
students, I guess, in this case. Keep that
Okay.
analogy going. Okay. So
Yeah.
for me, the number 8 episode is One for the Angels, episode 2, season 1. As I've said, I didn't really enjoy it. I usually, even in an episode I can't enjoy, I'll look for moments that I like. There were a few different effect moments where we saw like the effect when the Dark Angel or whoever that character was representing would show up. We get that light signification, and then suddenly the person who's going to die sees is able to see him. That effect was good, but aside from that, I just couldn't find a lot to like in that episode. So for me, that's solidly in the number 8 position.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I liked it a bit better than you, but I can't really disagree. I would agree that that is number eight at this point.
Okay, let's alternate. Why don't you give 7?
Okay. Well, number seven, I think it's got to be Escape Clause, which was the sixth episode that aired. And it came after one that we really liked. And I thought, surely the next one will be at least, kind of almost as good as that. But this one was really a big step backward for me. I didn't really like it that much. I didn't think it really worked. So yeah, for me, this is definitely number seven, Escape Clause.
Yeah, it's interesting because that is was one of the highly praised and more critically acclaimed episodes at the time it came out, as you might remember. But yeah,
Ah,
it's ironic that it's towards the bottom of our list. To me, this had moments that I really enjoyed, but it just never came together and made a lot of sense. I never got like a real purpose, a real forward momentum in it. It did have some good moments, but I would agree that that would be next. For me, I have Where Is Everybody? This is episode 1. So this kind of starts everything off. The positive is it has a lot, the formula is there. The formula is there of like what a episode of the Twilight Zone could be. All of the elements that make a great episode of the Twilight Zone is there, but this one just doesn't execute it quite well. And for me, it's the reason it's kind of on the bottom half of the list is I couldn't find a moment. I couldn't find a scene or a shot. There wasn't this brilliant shot or this one scene that stuck out to me. It was all kind of just bland. If it had even one moment, I would have rated it higher because the formula was so good, but there was nothing that stood out to me. No characters, no scenes, no shots. It was just kind of, flatlining.
yeah, and this is where we may slightly disagree because I mean, I do agree with you that it's not perfect, but I kind of think was a perfect introduction to the show. I think it kind of had a lot of the iconic elements, including the last person on Earth, which we've seen again on a couple of other episodes. So to me, it's just a perfect introduction, and so I would push it a little bit higher than
So
this,
don't
but
say where you have it. When
yeah,
we get to that
yeah,
number, you'll tell me. Let me know what
Yes.
you have at number six.
Number six for me would be the 16 millimeter shrine, which, I like the idea of it, and I love the performance of the lead, of course, and even uh, what's his name as well, the second lead. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it pales
His
in
name is the
comparison.
second lead.
No, no, I don't have his name.
I'm
Martin
just,
Balsam. Martin
I'm
Balsam.
just, I'm just joking.
Um, but yes,
The Alzheimer's kicking in.
yeah, unfortunately, the performances are great. I love the idea, but it does pale. You can't help but compare it to Sunset Boulevard, which is just better. And I think that the Twilight Zone aspect of it comes in really, really late to the episode. Um, and it's cool, but it comes in really late. And I wonder if it came in a little earlier, it might have been better. But yeah, to me, that's 16 millimeter Shrine is number six for me.
I agree with everything you said, and it is in the bottom four of these eight that we have. It's the top of my bottom four. So we just kind of, for me, instead of it being number six, I have it at number five. So I would say the reason I have it above where is everyone else, where is everybody, and I don't have it any higher or lower is because all the faults you said is why it's not any higher. But for me, why it's a little bit higher than what you have it is because at least one slot at least above where you have it is because I thought that with escape clause, one for the angels, where is everyone, there wasn't any scenes that stood out to me. This had an amazing scene where they're trying to say how old she is, and they give her, there's her co-star shows up who's clearly like 20 years older than her, and it's just like unintentional gaslighting that I found
Yeah.
hilarious. And also, Ida Lupino, is that her name? I
Yes.
believe.
Yes.
She was just amazing. I thought
Yeah.
she was great, and I think her performance was kind of better than the performances in the lead characters for the other episodes that we've mentioned so far. So for
Mm.
that scene and for her performance, it's a little bit elevated, but all those flaws you mentioned, I see as well, and it's definitely a flawed episode. So, what do you have at number five? Since that's my
Number
number
five.
five.
Yes. Yeah. Well, my number five, I would go for Mr. Denton on Doomsday, which, there's a lot to like about it, and especially the performances. Martin Landau and what's his name? Now I'm
Dan
going blank.
Durai, Duray.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah.
It's okay,
Um,
Grandpa.
yes, yeah. Um, yeah, the performances are great, and I mean, I love westerns, and it's a good story. But again, the Twilight Zone elements of it, the magic that seems to be present, it just doesn't quite work somehow. It doesn't quite gel with the rest of it, and in a way, it would have been better if it wasn't even there, and they just did it as a straight story. So for me, it didn't quite work, although I loved the performances and I loved a lot of moments on it. But yeah, I don't know. It felt like a very flawed episode to me.
Mhm. So for me, this is my number four instead of my number five where you have it. And I would say I agree with all the flaws you said. And for me, the reason it's higher than the others is because Dan Dury, however you pronounce his last name, I thought his performance was up until this was episode four, and this is ironically, no, this was episode three.
Mm.
But for me, up until the previous episodes, I thought he was the best lead performance. I thought he was better than Ida. I thought he was better than the others. I thought his performance really carried the episode. His acting for me was what carried it, and this was the first one where we have a really standout supporting character. With the others,
Mhm.
it's all about the lead. The supporting characters are kind of good at supporting, but they don't really stand out. This was the first one where the supporting character with Martin Landau, I was just smiling when he was on screen because he was just so magnetic and such a good antagonist. And this is going to be a pattern for some of the better Twilight Zone episodes, is not just having that strongly performance, but also having a really good antagonist to play off of them. So for me, it was the acting, but all the flaws you said I agree with. And for me, this ends average to below average episodes that we've watched so far. And for me, starting at number three is where things really get elevated. So I had that at number four. You had that at number five, right?
Yes.
So what?
Yes.
So since that's my number four, what is your number four?
My number four would be Where Is Everybody, the pilot episode. And again, it's because I really like it as just the concept of it, the idea of it. I think it is a perfect example of what the Twilight Zone is. And yeah, it's not a perfect episode. There are flaws in it, but overall, I just think it makes a statement. And I mean, it sold the show. To me, it's a great episode in a way, but I admit that performances are stronger in some of the other ones, and the writing might be stronger in some of the other ones. But just as a concept and an overall feeling from it, I just kind of loved it.
At this point, things really start getting serious. These are the great episodes of The Twilight Zone. Must watch. Why this series is great, why we're talking about it all these decades after it's been made. These are the creme de la creme, however you want to phrase it. And for me, that starts off with number three, The Lonely. Brilliant episode. The concept, the premise, it's been used. When we did the review, I mentioned Ex Machina. There's just been so many things, TV shows, literature, comics, so many forms of media that explore humanity, robots, oh, I'm sorry, robots, and what makes a robot what makes a robot real, what makes a person real, loneliness, isolation, so many great concepts. And it's just a shame it wasn't part of one of those hour-long episodes where it could have explored them even more. But that was just a brilliant episode, and it's levels above everything else we've mentioned so far.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said, and I would just add that I think the ending was probably one of the most shocking moments in television history, and I think it still packs a punch. Great episode. I love it. Yeah, number three.
Okay. All right, we have two left, number two and number one. Do you want to? So obviously, one of us is going to do one of us is going to do the other. Do you prefer to do number two or number one?
I'll take number two.
Okay.
Um, number two is Walking Distance, which was in fact the fifth episode that aired, and I think it's a masterpiece. I think it is a great episode. I think it has all the elements from the performances, the great lead character, the story, the twists. I mean, it's all there. It's everything that you want in a Twilight Zone episode. And I know it was a highly personal story for Rod Serling as well, and that may add something to it. But I just think it's a great episode, and yeah, it's number two.
Okay. Number one is the episode we just watched. We just talked about it for about 30 minutes, so I don't know if we necessarily need to go into it that much more. So, with that said, that is our list. What do you guys think? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. And until next week, class dismissed.